Excellent. Thank you. Um, Ross and I are going to do a pretty quick presentation. So if you can hold your questions and comments to the end, that would be great. If you have a burning question or burning comment and you're worried you're going to forget it, you can put it right into the question and answer function. And that should be on the toolbar. You should see that as a toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Also in the question and answer function, if you could use that to please sign in with your name and address and your email address. If you care to share that, that would be great. We'd appreciate that. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can use the chat or email me and I will try my best to help you. But as you can see, I'm having my own technical difficulties. So the purpose of today's meeting is to share with you and discuss with you all the neighbors and the abutters, um, the conceptual plan, kind of that we'll talk about the constraints, the opportunities, and the special and some particular impacts. And it's also an opportunity for the transportation safety group to understand the neighborhood and the abutters concerns and needs of the neighborhood in regards to this sidewalk. So to start off, who is the transportation safety group? We are a staff group that has been assigned by the town manager, and we have a member from the police department, the engineering department, transportation services, school department, planning division, and then we are also advised by, we have a representative from the Commission on Disability, the Transportation Committee, and the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And we handle most of the roadway traffic issues come through us. And then often, because the select board are our road commissioners, we then make recommendations to the select board. There we go. So a sidewalk request starts with signatures that indicates neighborhood support. TSG reviews this request, and then the petitioner is invited to a transportation safety group meeting to kind of present their ideas. This happened for Cedar Street in 2017. If TSG feels that a potential sidewalk would enhance Lexington's sidewalk network and has general support, TSG then engages a land surveyor to create an existing conditions plan. And this was completed in 2018. And you all can look at that on the Transportation Safety Group's website, on the town's website. After that, TSG hosts a public meeting. That's what this is, where we're going to review conceptual plans and talk about how a sidewalk could work on Cedar Street. From there, TSG then potentially requests funding through the capital plan. That happens this September. The budget is carefully reviewed by the town manager, the capital expenditures committee, and the select board. But ultimately, the town meeting votes, and they're the ones that make the decision on whether a sidewalk on Cedar Street is funded. The design and construction then would go into the Department of Public Works work plan, and then a final, more detailed design process begins, and that process involves the abutters as we work out various impacts. And then finally, construction. So that's sort of the overall process of a sidewalk. But deciding on a sidewalk is difficult because the wider community will use the sidewalk, or at least we hope they will. However, the immediate neighbors, the direct abutters, they usually bear more of the impact of a new sidewalk. So in 2017, the town, with the help of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, they created a sidewalk prioritization plan that was mostly just addressing needs where where there seems to be a high need for a sidewalk. And Cedar Street rates moderately high for part of it and less as it goes deeper towards Pine Street, not Pine Street, I'm sorry, the Pine Hill Golf Course. And then if we're gonna think about whether we're really gonna build a sidewalk, there's a lot of consideration. We look at the connectivity. Does this proposed sidewalk, does it fill in gaps in our sidewalk network? Will it enhance or extend our overall sidewalk network? But also, will the sidewalk get people where they want to go? We look at the crash history of the roadway. We also look at the roadway characteristics, the widths, the grades, sight lines, and is there enough room to fit the sidewalk in? Would takings be needed, easements, that sort of thing? And environmental factors. So will there be impacts to wetlands? Is there ledge in the area? Is there substantial fill needed or substantial cutting needed? And Ross, I'm going to hand it over to Ross. Ross is going to tell more of the specifics of Pine Street. I apologize, Cedar Street.
Okay, here's some basic facts about Cedar Street, which you probably all know, but let's run through it. We're talking about Pine Meadows Golf Course to Mass Ave. That's the full stretch. It's a little under a mile, about 0.8 miles. And the pavement width, I'm sure many of you have driven it and walked it. It varies considerably from 18, 19 feet all the way up to a few wide points at like 30 feet. The right-of-way width, right-of-way is the area the town owns, is about 25 to 40 feet, depending on where you are. It varies a lot as well. And it's bounded by 73 parcels. There's 73 different abutters along this route. Obviously, anybody who's been out there knows it's well lined by trees and landscaping and some retaining walls, some landscape features. We also have 11 intersections along this stretch. Next slide. Some more sort of traffic related notes. There's been 6 reported crashes that the police have on file. You can see in the graphic, this is between 2016 and 2021. We usually look at about, oh, sorry, the 6 crashes are between 2010 and 2021. And speeds, we did a speed study last month, and there's an average speed of right around 20. The 85th percentile, which is usually what designers look at for, that's the majority of cars, that's the speed they're going at or under, is 24, so right around the town speed limit. And then the maximum, there was one person doing 38 miles an hour through there. This information is interesting because I know a lot of people feel like a lot of cars are speeding out there, but you start to get just a few that are doing that 30 to 38 speed limit, and it feels like there's a lot more people speeding. But the speeds actually were relatively decent out there. Next slide. So this is the sidewalk network that we have now. In the graphic, you have existing sidewalks in the sort of orange color on the map. We just put the one in going up Hill Street, and there's one on Paul Revere Road, and of course Mass Ave in the lower corner. And then there's a few other ones at the newer developments of Martingale and Winding. This sidewalk, if it were to go forward, would connect the golf course to Mass Ave. You have connections to the Poor Farm Conservation Area. You would be able to get to Mass Ave with reasonable proximity to Hastings Park and the high school. And also there are school bus routes that go through here. I'm sure we've all seen those school buses and the kids waiting for them in the mornings. Next slide. Oh, so yeah, here's our concept plans. We threw it in as a slide, but I'm going to switch over to my screen and we'll take a little bit of a closer look. This is going to be a bit of an overview. All right, I hope you can see my my PDF I got up here. What we're looking at is right now you have the golf course right on the left side of the screen. And then as you head to the right, that would be heading towards Mass Ave. We're going to scroll through it briefly. What I wanted to show you is the impacts, some of the sample properties we might look at and how we evaluate impacts. The blue lines, I should say, we are only looking to do a sidewalk on one side if this project moves forward. We are not at all intending on two sidewalks, but part of this process is to look to see which side of the road would be better suited for a sidewalk. That's why you see the blue lines on each side. The blue lines represent a 5-foot wide sidewalk set right at the edge of road. Typically, we like to include a 3-foot grass strip, but this road is so narrow that I don't think that's feasible. The red lines are the property lines. So we're really trying to keep our sidewalks inside those two red lines that run along the street. So this first section, I'm just going to zoom in on a property and we'll take a look just at kind of what we look at in the office as designers. Maybe. So just as a sample property to look at, we can see we've got, I don't know if you can see my cursor as I move it, but we have the two blue lines. This is 22 Martingale. We have the back side of the sidewalk would actually protrude outside the town's right of way by a good 3 feet at the utility pole. There's a wall that we'd look at, see what type it is in the field, see if it's realistic to move it back. Is it a landscaping wall? Is it holding up the yard? And then there's a utility pole right in the center of this property. Do we have enough clearance to go behind it? You know, we definitely want to keep the town's minimum that we try and go with is about 52 inches. That gives plenty of space for the sidewalk plow or a snow blower, strollers, that type of stuff. And something to keep in mind as we go across trees, like there's a 24-inch tree right on the corner of this property on the left side. While it looks like the center of the tree may be outside the sidewalk, just by digging in the area to get a good sidewalk base, we might be damaging the roots. So trees right along the backside might have to be removed if that's the case. So I'll zoom out a little bit. And again, I'm just going to kind of scroll through this kind of quick. Like I said, 73 properties. It's a little tough to look at every single one over the course of the meeting. But just to give you an idea of what we're looking at and how narrow some parts of these roads are. You know, you can see at 187, just where the road falls within the right of way, almost the entire sidewalk would have to be on somebody's private property where we'd need easements or takings. So this kind of shows the block from Martingale to Fremont. I'll give you a second to look at that. And I do apologize if I scroll right by your property and wanted to see more detail. These plans are available online and we're happy to discuss them anytime. So here's Fremont to Homestead. This area something we might say is, oh, there's actually room within the right of way to put the sidewalk on that even house number side for this one block. And while we're talking about sides, something we want to avoid, we wouldn't want to do a sidewalk on the even number side for one block and then switch it to the odd number side for another block and then switch it back. You know, every time we have to do a crosswalk across Cedar Street, it's one more conflict point, and we try and stay away from those if we can. Here's Homestead to Hamblin. Here's a spot right by Hamblin where it appears there's extra space on the odd side and the roadway itself really cuts right along the right of way on the even side. I'm going to go to the next sheet. Hamblin to Denver. This is where the right-of-way gets a little wider, where it starts to be a little more feasible to actually fit a sidewalk in. Then we go across Balfour. And then as we get past Girard and getting closer to Hill Street, I believe Hill Street might be on the next page. You can see there really starts to be some pinch points again. So we'll move down to the next section. All right, here is the Paul Revere and the Hill Street intersection. Depending on which side, we would either tie right into the new Hill Street sidewalk or into the crosswalk to get across to Hill Street. And as we go along Cedar, closer to the Mass Ave section, you can see that it's fairly consistent width. There are a few interesting pinch points, like this one between 32 Cedar and 28 Cedar, where the right of way just kind of pinches in one little point. And then finally, as we get down to Mass Ave, on the even number side, we have one piece of sidewalk along the final property on the even side, and along the odd side, there's this final house that is just off the right of way. So there's kind of an overview of what we're looking at in while we take a look at these plans and as we walk through the field and make notes to ourselves. I think with that, Sheila, if you want to take back control.
Sure. Let's see. All right, you all see my back to the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Excellent. So kind of what will TSG consider as they make their report and recommendation to the select board? We of course will be considering this meeting, and I was just looking, most of the members of TSG are also on this call and are listening in. We look at whether the sidewalk will fill the network gaps. Does it provide safe routes to schools, to parks, to places people want to go? But on the other hand, are there alternative routes that people could use, making this sidewalk not needed? Is there neighborhood support? We look carefully at the impacts to front yards that are in private property, but also part of people's sort of front yards also go into the right of way. Will walls, trees, fences need to be moved? We look at the cost and ease of construction. Are easements and takings needed? All this is kind of put together in our report. And all this will be considered as the budget is reviewed. Town meeting will also they'll have our report, and they will also be making these similar considerations. And then once the design and construction, if town meeting approves funding and design and construction moves over and DPW takes over the process, there will be a final design, and during that final design, abutters will be contacted, and certain issues will be worked out directly with each abutter. Let's see. So we very much want some feedback. If you have questions and comments, which we'll take tonight, but if you don't want to say it out loud, you can use the Q&A function. You can also email me at spage@lexingtonma.gov and Ross at rmurrow@lexingtonma.gov. If you want to discuss particulars about your property, Ross is happy to talk to you, and you can call him at 781-274-8323. So if you have some questions, please raise your hand. You could also do *9 if you're on the phone, or also in the Q&A. And I see one question, let's see, thank you everybody who signed in on the Q&A. there was a question about when the speed data was taken, and it was taken over 7 days. So it's a 7-day average, and it was done during, I think it was August, I don't know, August 12th to the 19th or somewhere around there. And the other question they were also wondering if the speeds would change when schools when school's in session, would that change the speeds? And I don't know. I can look back at some historical data that we have as well to check. Let's see. Does anybody have their hands raised? I am not seeing. Oh, we got somebody. Erica Downs, I think you're able to speak.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
I was just wondering, you said the data was taken in August. I was wondering of which year?
Oh, this year.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Let's see, Katie. Let's see. I think Katie, you can talk.
Sorry, my last name is confusing.
I know. I decided not to go
it's
for
all
it. Sorry about that.
Two questions. One on the speed data. I think everyone's sort of reacting to the fact that seems really slow compared to how fast it feels, at least, that people go, particularly as they enter Cedar Street off Mass Ave. So I was wondering where the speeds were recorded.
The speeds were recorded up by the intersection of Fremont and Cedar, and then down by, or similar location, I think it was 154 Cedar, thereabouts.
Okay.
And those two, they're pretty close together. They came out very similar. They were only tenths of a speed, of a tenths apart. It was pretty close.
Okay. And then my other question was if you could explain a little bit the difference between an easement versus a taking. What is that, and what does that mean?
I can touch on that a little bit. So the taking means the town accepts the property as their own, one way or another, whether it's bought. There's obviously other ways to do it, but whatever piece of the property the town takes becomes town property. An easement is an agreement between the property owner and, in this case, the town, that they may use that area for a certain purpose, in this case, a sidewalk. So the property owner retains the property, but they give the town permission to place the sidewalk and maintain it on top of that property. And it definitely is just pieces. It's not like a blanket, oh, now our property is able to be walked on or anything like that. It's very specific about what area and what the use is. Oftentimes there's reasons for not doing the taking. It sounds like, well, if they're going to do a sidewalk, why would I want to retain the property? And it's because the easement doesn't count against, I'm not sure if it doesn't count against offsets. I'd have to look that up, but it does count as still as your property when it comes to square footage of the entire lot and the frontage and things like that.
Thank you. I think, so in terms of setbacks, I know there's quite a few of the older homes along Cedar are existing non-conforming in terms of zoning setbacks already. So.
Yep, and that's one of the reasons why we definitely want to do everything we can to keep the sidewalk inside the town right of way, is that your setback is to your property line. Your setback would be to those red lines that were in the plan, not to the pavement. So this project hopefully wouldn't affect any setbacks.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. I have a ton of questions. Is there any, does the town look at turning in particular. And to be honest, I live at 12 Cedar, so I live at the section from Mass Ave to Hill Street. Does the town look at making a portion of a street one way to, you know, we would still allow traffic into the neighborhood, but it would reduce the amount of traffic to make adding the sidewalk easier? Or is that a definite, like, no-go?
It's something we could look at, but in general, that's a no-go. That's a lot of, there's a lot to take into account. If you make one road one way, you're forcing traffic somewhere else. And most likely if they're heading down Cedar Street, they're trying to get in that direction. So now they're going down Bellflower or one of the other streets that kind of run parallel. You have to get pretty much, you know, the entire neighborhood has to want to agree to that. Not that we don't want the entire neighborhood or need the entire neighborhood to be on a sidewalk, but turning a street one way is quite a lengthy process. Again, it's something we often sort of consider in passing for various reasons, but it's usually not something we can follow through on.
Okay.
Let's see, we have Justine. I think you can unmute yourself. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to point out what people were saying about the speed. I think that the thing with Cedar Street that's tricky is because it's narrow, because it curves in weird ways, and there isn't much of a shoulder, as we can see, the speeds, I think, feel faster because you're right up against a wall, or, you know, if you're trying to walk on the left-hand side of the street against traffic, you can be really crunched. So speed curves, like line of sight for oncoming traffic, is a concern. That just, I wonder how that is factored. You know, the speed is one thing, but the conditions of the road with the speed is another.
Writing. Yeah, because there is the real speed and then there's the perceived speed. And yeah, the roadway layout lends itself to a different feeling than the actual speed.
And I know you did mention that there was the possibility, and I see someone wrote it in the chat also, of partial plans that you could address one or two sections. Right. As was noted on the map that you had about priorities, the section from Mass Ave to Hill Street and Paul Revere has a different priority in terms of connectiveness and getting to town for the whole neighborhood than way down by the golf course. Do you know, or how does the committee recommend in terms of partial versus the entire project?
Yes, I mean, that's a possibility. That's kind of in all of our report, in that it's not necessarily an all or nothing. Maybe it is only partial, and we're splitting it up and doing a second part later on. But yes, it is a possibility to split it up.
I will add, we do want to make sure whatever segment we do makes sense. You don't want to do sidewalk in front of 3 houses and just have it end at nowhere. So, you know, we do have to have a good segment that has some connectivity to it.
Right. The section between Hill and Mass Ave is the one I was thinking is very much right next to some other things, but I'll go on mute now. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Let's see, Mark. Let's see, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, hi. The drawings you've provided contain a number of inaccuracies. At what point will the drawings be firmed up and be provided that are a lot more accurate? I assume that, you know, those drawings would need to be provided before any budget decision is taken.
It depends on what you're suggesting are the inaccuracies. Certainly, we have a survey from approximately 2 years ago, and there's constantly construction going on. So there's definitely new houses there. People have changed their landscaping, maybe put up new fences or have moved fences, things like that. We would do a field walk. We wouldn't plan on updating the survey for this before we go to design. We'll walk it in the field and make our notes. Okay, this tree is gone, this fence has moved, this house is changed. But as far as the budget goes, there's not much that's going to really significantly affect the budget in as far as that sort of scope goes, in my opinion. And if you do know of an area that, hey, this is completely different than it used to be, let me know.
Okay, yeah, maybe we'll give you a call. We live at 160 Cedar Street, and yeah, the boundaries are significantly different to what you have published, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're incorrect. It's just that they're not what we would expect to see. Another question I have is in terms of the right of way. Is there a book and page number of that right of way that you have that can be provided?
I would have to check with their surveyor. There, you know, we hired a licensed land surveyor to do this work, and they're the ones who are responsible for the right of way. So they should have some amount of backup for what they use to draw it in. But I personally don't have that information.
Okay, so maybe if we call you separately, then we can look at it further.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you.
So somebody asked in the Q&A, they wanted to know about the signatures from 2017, and it took me a while to look it up, but there were 136 households that responded, 470 residents, but 136 households. 127 supported it. 30 of those were direct abutters, 9 were against, and 4 direct abutters were against. So that was the stats in 2017. Let's see. I want to just scan. I want to make sure we're getting, because I think questions are coming in. Oh, somebody asked if we can share the drawings again. We can do that, Ross, if you want to kick me out. Lots of good comments. Another question was, does the preliminary review suggest whether odd or even is more like the more likely side?
I got to be honest, it's a pretty tough question if we're segmenting it off. The Mass Ave to Hill, or yeah, I was thinking the even side, just because that's where that first section of sidewalk is. But it really does kind of flip back and forth about which would be more beneficial in different areas. It's really tough to tell. For now, I would say the even side for that section, Mass Ave to Hill. And after that, we need to basically study it more, see what people feel about it.
And then we have another question. If we kind of already talked about this, but if a partial plan is considered, do you see logical stopping points, such as Mass Ave to Hill Street or someplace further down Cedar Street? So they are suggesting where dropping pedestrians into the street won't be a problem. They're suggesting that the Hill Street Cedar Street intersection is dangerous enough not to end the sidewalk right there.
So we have talked a little bit about, okay, could we bring it to Balfour? You know, as you can see, I kind of popped it up on the screen. There's some pinch points between Paul Revere, which is just off the screen to the right. But once you get to Girard, you sort of open up a little bit and you could get to Balfour, which would be a pretty good intersection to stop at. Overall, the longer project, we talked about bringing to the Fremont winding intersection. There's sidewalks unwinding, and it seemed like we weren't sure how much foot traffic would get past there. Now, as we've learned, there's a conservation trail right in front of the golf course, but there's sort of a lot going on in that last segment. Pull that up real quick.
Are you waiting for me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, if there's another question, I'm scrolling
Sorry, I
down
thought
to-
you were going to show one more thing. I was
Oh.
reading the question. So yes, Jay Shree has a question. I'm going to unmute you. Whoops, oh, and I just lost them. Here they,
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
you're on.
thanks for taking my question. Have you considered the possibility of just installing speed bumps along Cedar Street? The reason I say that is we've lived here for many years, and you know our kids have gone through Hastings and Diamond and now high school, and we've also had a dog, and we've walked up and down Cedar Street with our dog. And we're closer to the Mass Ave side. So just given what Ross said a few minutes ago about the trickiness of how the property lines and the lines up to the road and the pavement is, and it's not uniform all across Cedar Street. You know, there are jumping off points where one could potentially just sort of ease off of the road a little bit. So to address that, have you considered just installing speed bumps? Is that something that you would do?
Have we considered it? Yes, because I believe speed has been brought up before. I'm not positive. I think it was through TSG, aside from the sidewalk request. So that's one of the reasons why we initially did the speed study. In general, I was going to say the town, but more DPW and emergency services, they really don't like speed bumps or speed humps. Obviously, it's a plow issue. It's emergency services responding to things, to their calls. I will say, you know, if you have a speed bump, if you end up being the person who has it in front of your house, you're going to hear, you know, any sort of landscape truck with some dragging chains or anything like that gets to be quite a racket. But in general, we don't do a lot of speed humps around town. There are other things we're looking at, like we were just kicking around the idea of a double yellow line down the middle. Doesn't seem like much, and we just did one, I'm going to say on Merriam last summer. I think it was Merriam, where the residents, you know, they were like, "Oh, why are you striping our street? And this looks awful. Now it looks like a highway." But what it does is it gives the appearance that you have to stay on your side of the road. Now that you're on your side of the road, you're going to slow down. Small things like that do work. So there are some other things we're looking at doing to sort of try and get the speeds a little bit lower. Somebody made the comment, you know, 25 still seems pretty high for this road. And I do agree, you know, I've driven this a bunch of times. And yeah, I'm not going 25 down this street. So there are other things we can look at. Speed humps on their own, I'm not sure how far we'll get with that one.
All right, thank you.
Next question, Eric.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks much. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and especially looking. So we're at 15 Cedar Street, which is one of the first houses off of Mass Ave. And for me, speed is one issue, but I think it's the sight lines as well. And so I think, thinking about the sidewalks as an option for walkers and to be able to have that safe passage, is important. So I would just, also in terms of the recommendations, hope also, because it is a very curvy street. There's, as you said, there's sort of 11, you've got Childs, Columbia, all the way down with a lot of streets coming off of it. To be able to find sort of those sidewalks for safe passage for all the walkers that are making, their way to the golf course, making their way to walk the beautiful neighborhoods. Hopefully it's just something that's also being taken into account. But I know with, our kids now going to Hastings and Diamonds, it's, we're watching them cross the streets, even though they're only a couple houses away from the existing sidewalk, just because there really is very difficult sight lines coming from there. But I do appreciate the work and hope that would be considered. And, we'll take the sidewalk on odd numbers or even numbers, whatever you recommend. We would give up our front for it if that's what was asked.
Thank you. I'm looking for, so.
There was a question in there about timeline for decisions.
Oh.
So to touch on something we talked about in the slides, TSG is going to meet, I believe, on Friday morning to do a final discussion of this, take any feedback we have, and sort of decide whether we want to put a recommendation in towards the select board and the budgeting committee. They'll do their work on it after that. And then town meeting votes in April.
March or April, kind of
March or
depending when
April.
it's up. Yeah.
So you won't hear much from us as far as design, as far as the engineering of it. There won't be much between now and then. Once we have clear direction and funds available, then we'll start canvassing the neighborhood as far as what our limits are, knocking on doors, making, planning meetings. It's probably going to be a lot of work next fall as far as design and finalizing those little details go. Generally, just so everyone's aware, when town meeting votes to approve funding in April, in the spring, the funding becomes available in July. But because you don't know ahead of time, it's very hard to program the work for that summer. So a lot of the design work happens the following winter in order to construct the following year. I'm not sure if that makes sense to everybody, if I kept those dates clear, but so we'd be looking at probably the heavy lift and meeting with people to discuss what would happen in front of their house, probably close to a year from now.
Let's see. Katie, is your hand still up or do you have a question? Whoops.
No, I don't have a question.
Or a comment. A comment is fine too. Okay. Okay. Eric? Whoops. Your hand must be still up. All right, there's one hand. I don't see it. Oh. Where is it? Here it is. Bridger? Is your hand up?
It is. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Excellent.
And thank you for the briefing. It's very informative. I really appreciate the effort that you guys took to revamp and get a lot more of this content on the website. I think, the website is our friend. And so I appreciate getting all the updated information in there. I guess I just have a couple larger questions and I really resonate well with the speed bump and the stop signs and other sort of street calming measures that might be very cost effective in thinking about our budgets as we try to build a new high school, and the cost of the taxpayers. And so when I look at this, I was just wondering, like, how are we looking at the cost benefit analysis for this entirety of this project with all of these different street calming, complete streets, one side versus the other side, re-landscaping. There's all those blind curves that we've been talking about are just bends. A lot of that can just, some of that might be just paying people to pull out their bushes, so that people can see around the corner better. How is that cost benefit analysis being prepared by the TSG? Do you have
what?
do you have a standard in Lexington for the cost benefit analysis with all these ideas that folks have put on the table tonight, or is it more nuanced than that? But
I guess what I would say is, I guess there's more nuance to that. I know that there's a lot of thought that, okay, if speeds were slower, it'd be safer to walk. And to some extent that is true, but this is a narrow road. And if people are walking in the street, it's still going to be unsafe. So there really is two different issues here. One is the speeds, and the other is a sidewalk necessary, or would it be enough of a benefit to move forward with? Sidewalks are expensive. The Hill Street sidewalk that we're just wrapping up came in right around $1 million to build. I think that's about, I think it was 4,000 feet worth, just a little bit short of a mile. So just to give people an idea what it might cost, there's definitely some similarities here. We do look at cost benefit in sort of the odd side versus even side. For example, on Hill Street, it was initially proposed on the other side of the road. Then it was constructed, and we were looking, and there's just a lot of ledge outcrops. There'd be a lot of retaining walls. There'd be a lot of loss of trees over there. Yeah. Whereas we kind of looked, we'd rather put it on the side with more houses, but the cost, it was probably at least 50% more to do it on the other side. Now, as far as ranking sidewalk costs versus speed humps and signing, speed humps and signing may, they're for traffic calming. It's somewhat of a different issue. I do think this is the type of road where you either need a sidewalk or you don't. We can slow cars down to 15 miles an hour. It'll be safer, but it's still not going to solve the issue of there's not enough space on the road for all your users.
Does it, I was trying to read and I just got glasses during the pandemic, so I apologize, I can't read this awesome site plan, but at the Childs Road, Columbus Street, have we put in stop signs for all these intersections?
Do you mean like a three-way stop, or do you mean a stop sign at the end of the side road? Like
3 ways.
So stop signs are a very tricky thing. It's can be a lengthy discussion. The national guidance, the manual on uniform traffic control devices, it's sort of like a traffic engineer's Bible. It says you can't use stop signs for traffic calming. So if you say, oh, people are speeding through here, let's throw up a three-way stop. That's actually not allowed. Now, as engineers and people who think outside the box, there are some places where we do have sightline issues that make intersections dangerous. And then you can consider it in those terms. But again, it's, the guidance is pretty strict about, if you have one road that's sort of the through street, you're not supposed to be throwing stop signs up on it.
So Ross, can I just build on this? So this is where I was, the stop signs people might feel that they're being ignored, but if we're going to build a sidewalk on one side of the street and eventually it has to cross a street, I assume we'd put a stop sign up, right? So we want to make sure that Childs Road doesn't dump into Cedar, right? There's a stop sign there.
There's a stop sign at the end of Childs, or again, or a
Yeah,
three-way
yeah.
stop.
But if you're going to put in crosswalk, if it's one side versus the other or both sides, I just think this is where the creative awesomeness of the power of planners is actually to not just follow the guidance holistically, but to look at people are speeding through this area and we're putting all these measures in and we have cost benefit challenges in the town. That's why I was asking about cost issues, because there may be some benefit to just to your outside the box comment, which I really appreciate. And then I guess the final thing was just like the larger capital budget process. Like where do you guys put this project versus other project? I only saw this project on the website. I didn't know if the community was aware of your roadmap of priorities. I know there's the really hard to read color map, but that's just the survey, not necessarily the TSG's charge to like, okay, so Cedar's up, you know, our risk analysis suggests we should tackle, you know, A, B, and C next.
You want to take that one, Sheila, or?
Sure. So yeah, you can add to it if you need to. So we have a sidewalk process that sort of puts sidewalks, we might say, in a queue. But also DPW, and Ross can talk about this more, as roads come up on their maintenance list, they are looked at a little more holistically where there's opportunity. So there's kind of a balance of when an opportunity, saving stuff for when an opportunity might arise versus, you know, just getting it on the capital plan and pushing them through. Typically the town likes to do a sidewalk a year, although we did not do one last year because of the pandemic. We got a little spread out because we were on a little bit of being extra careful for the budget, but that's the typical timing.
So does the TSG have a priority list that they publish?
No, not at the moment. However, there is, I think on the website, there is sort of a list of sidewalks where there's been some conversations from residents. So this would be a resident driven list from various requests.
Yeah, I
but
saw that Lincoln, Westminster, Mass Ave, Burlington North, Peacock, but
yeah,
I was just, and we don't have to answer this here tonight, but I thought it was important that this is, I really value how much expertise and history, and we heard some residents tonight, you know, talk about like how long they've been thinking about this. I don't think this process right now adequately reflects like the timing and like, is Peacock Farm really important today, or when did it go on the list? You know what I mean? So that there's I think a lot of things are changing financially in the town, and I think it's important for all of us in town meeting and taxpayers to like understand that just because somebody got it on the list doesn't necessarily mean that it should stay on the list, or that we shouldn't like scrutinize it, you know, deeply as neighbors and residents.
yes.
I completely agree with you. And we are working currently on updating our prioritization and our process on how this is done. Because I agree, just because somebody wants, you know, one person wants a sidewalk on their road, it may not be necessary. And yeah, town shouldn't be prioritizing that over a more major network connection.
Yeah, I just know how much planning time goes into even thinking about some of these things. So thank you very much.
Right. And just to add, I will say that list that's on the website none of them are guaranteed. It's the general order that we will
Yeah.
take them as consideration, but yeah, none of them Well, I
I-
shouldn't say none, but few of them have been vetted. And like Ross said, we are likely to change the process because I think the whole town needs to, prioritize them as opposed to sidewalks that have.
Does that,
you know,
that, to your point, and this might actually help you like galvanize support for these projects that are ready and where there's a lot of mojo behind them, like we're seeing with Cedar. So maybe there's a way to like contextualize these other projects on the website so that we, are aligning sooner than, or not at all, and things fall off, just come off the list.
Okay, yeah, thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. Thanks again for all your work.
I think we have. There was another hand raised. There is Jesse.
Hi, is that audible?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
great. Thanks so much. I do appreciate the suggestion just made about contextualizing, but I want to add that I'm trying to figure out the year, but I've lived on Hamblin Street and now live on Cedar Street since my kids were like 2 and 3 years old, and they're both now graduated from college. So it's at least like 23 years sort of. And Hill Street is really helpful to let older kids walk on the sidewalk, even over to Diamond. But we have a lot of small lots that were built after World War II, little, small person lots, and a lot of kids. And it has been consistently unsafe for kids to get from closer down by the golf course, the town golf course, just to Hastings. So we did years when Judy Crocker was organizing the walking school bus with I don't know what it's called in the schools right now, but we had years of like parents trying to cooperate and walk together, because you definitely couldn't do what they would have done in the 40s and just put your kid out the door and say, go to school, because Hill Street, it's just, people just drive too fast. So I agree with Bridger, if you can put it in context so that everyone in the community understands, but people are still, they're still stuck here. The road is narrow and cars drive too fast. And I'm wondering, while we wait, maybe it takes a year if you decide to do this and however you do it, if there are less expensive ways, I think this neighborhood would be very open to any attention that you can give to us. So we're not trying to be demanding and unreasonable, but there are a lot of little kids and frankly, people my age and older and dog walkers who have to walk down Cedar Street to get out of the neighborhood. And cars really do drive like right smack in the middle of the road in both directions. And it's unsettling. I don't know if there's even like an interim solution, having the police department, monitor the traffic for a couple of weeks. They do sometimes park on Hill Street. Even the last couple of days, there was a car parked there. They'll monitor people going down the hill too fast. But maybe it's worth being at the intersection and capturing perhaps some of the attention of people who are using our neighborhood as a cut through. So I just want to, I don't think we're trying to be unreasonable or waste money. Times are tough. We really understand it. But in terms of the cost benefit analysis, you have people can't walk. And so many people are also trying to be sustainable and walk to school. If they can't walk because they don't feel safe, that has an impact on the environment too. Thank you. Thank you for holding this and letting us, those of us who've kind of wanted this for more than 15, 20 years, it's, I almost missed it. Thank you to the neighbor who texted me like, it's now, because I was cleaning up the kitchen. So just thanks for letting us be heard and for understanding that, again, for many of us, it's been a very, very long time. And we may miss our entire kids' childhood being able to walk safely on the street. And I would like to not see the kids in my neighborhood have another whole cycle where they just can't safely walk. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Oops. Justine.
Yeah, sorry, I'm speaking up, but I just wanted to highlight what Jesse was saying about the cost benefit. We have not lived here as long as Jesse, but our son is severely disabled. There are a lot of other kids in the neighborhood that have disabilities that make walking on a street that's windy and doesn't have a sidewalk accessible for them. We do, but we hold his hand really tight the whole time. And I think it's really important, looking at the cost benefit to really walk down the street and see how many people are out, and honestly, how many people more would be walking down the street if there were a safe way to do so. I'd walk down it all the time, just like now I walk down Hill Street, but I wouldn't have before without a sidewalk. It's a real pathway for people from the Reed Street neighborhood to come to this neighborhood, for us to use all of the conservation, and people from inside and outside the neighborhood do that. So I think it's just important to make the decision on, as Ross was saying, on if the sidewalk is warranted without focusing too much on the budget. Just is this street a street that needs a sidewalk, period, which I think it does. I don't think the calming strategies would do enough. And then, you know, if it is not in the budget, or if the other things are from the same budget, then that's a different question. But that's just my 2 cents on that piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. So somebody in the chat said, I noticed that there are many cars parked along the road, which add to the effect of how narrow the road is. Will the crosswalks prevent these?
I believe they meant sidewalks, and yes, it is illegal to park on a sidewalk. So it is something we would be taking into account on where people are parking. Is it a legal parking spot? Is it not? You know, the town's parking bylaw says you're not allowed to block a lane with your car. So that's always a tricky one if you're at the edge of a road, trying to park on the side of a road. But it is correct to say that if there is a sidewalk, you can't park on it.
Let's see. Looking for more questions. You guys wrote a lot. Thank you. But now I gotta look, make sure I got the questions. A lot of great comments.
I'll throw this out there now. If anybody does want sort of a zoomed in picture of their frontage, they can email me, and I will kind of take a snapshot from our plan and send it off to them if the larger PDF doesn't load on your computer well.
All right, I think we have covered most of them. So if you all that are there want to humor us, we have a little poll to try to, to help us gauge generally, because this, as somebody pointed out, the petition was from 4 years ago. So I'm going to put up the poll, and we'd greatly appreciate any input. And then also I do see a question, somebody asking about how many trees would be cut down, and that frankly depends on which side of the street.
I would say a lot.
It's on, but yes.
There's a lot of nice mature trees out there that are lining the road on both sides. I don't have an exact count for you, but just drive down there, and any tree within 5 to 8 feet of the edge of the road would have to be cut down to put a sidewalk in on that side.
Oh, wait a minute. My poll didn't show up. All right. So I'm going to launch a poll. So we're trying to get as much information as we could in this one question. So it's kind of a 2-part question. It's a yes, no, and then do you live on Cedar Street or in the neighborhood? And so basically it does say, do you support the Cedar Street sidewalk, and where do you live? So if you could do 2 check boxes to answer, that would be greatly appreciated. Ross, my other poll didn't seem to roll through. So hopefully you all see it on your screen.
Well, we're getting some responses, so looks like it's working.
All right. I wish my other one worked.
There's a question, how many people are on the Zoom? Right now it says 50.
Yeah.
I believe there are a couple people who did have to log off, but roughly 50.
Right. All right. Poll is ended. I think you all will see the results. I'm not. I can share the results. So 82% say yes, 15% say no. 62 of you live on Cedar Street. 33% of you live in the neighborhood. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. I think, wait, we got a couple more messages in the chat. I think unless there's other questions, we'll hang on a few minutes. But thank you very much for coming, and please email us. I'm going to put up that screen real quick. Please email us with comments and call Ross if you have specific questions about your property and the potential impact. Let's see. Put that up. So that's our email address and Ross's phone number. And we appreciate your time. Thank you. Justine, did you have another question or comment?
Yes, I'm sorry. I know
No,
you
it's
said
fine.
that the TSG is meeting on Friday to make your recommendation. Is that right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so I'm just wondering how that will be reported, or how we'll get insight into what was recommended, since it's not stated here, obviously.
Right, and it's not a public meeting because it's a staff meeting. We will we'll write like a little report recommendation that will go to the select board, and so you'll see that after it goes to the select board, it'll be made public, that memo / report. And then I believe, although I'm not 100% sure, that we will be presenting the report to the select board at a select board meeting. I think on the 27th of September, but that's still up in the air. So.
And is that an open meeting?
That would be an open meeting. Yeah, select board meeting is an open meeting. And then all the sort of capital expenditures committee and the appropriations committee, all the sort of budgetary committees that might review the entire budget, those are all open meetings as well.
Great. Just wondering how to share it. So maybe I'll email you to figure out what happens on Friday, and then.
Yeah, and truthfully, Friday, yeah, I'm impressed with all these comments. So hopefully we'll get it done on Friday, but I'm not sure we will. But yeah, we need to get it done. The goal is to get it done by September 10th to have the report done and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So please nudge me if you haven't heard from me.
Okay.
I'm happy to let you know.
I'll send out any information to the people I've said that I have their contact information.
Okay. And then we have a bunch of folks put their email in the system tonight, so we can email them.
That would be great.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think That's it.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah, stop